Emily Dawson stepped into the school hallway, her arms full of papers and her expression calm. The early morning chatter of students filled the air, laughter, loud voices, the occasional clatter of lockers. The school had the same lively energy it always did, a place buzzing with the curiosity and chaos of youth. To the students and staff who noticed her as she walked by, Emily was just another substitute teacher. She had been assigned to this school for only a few weeks, filling in for a teacher on leave. Quiet, unassuming, and always polite, she blended in easily, drawing no attention to herself. But Emily carried a secret, one so remarkable it could turn this ordinary school into the epicenter of global attention if anyone discovered it. She moved through the halls with the kind of quiet confidence that hinted at a deeper story. Yet, no one noticed. Her modest clothes, her careful movements, and her reserved demeanor masked the truth about who she really was. The students barely acknowledged her. To them, she was just Ms. Dawson, the teacher who wasn't strict but wasn't exactly approachable either. She was nice enough, but not memorable. Teachers like her came and went. Why would anyone give her a second thought? Emily didn't mind the lack of attention. In fact, she preferred it that way. Her days in the spotlight were behind her, or so she thought. She wasn't here to make waves. Her only goal was to help the students and keep her head down. But life had a way of pulling people into situations they couldn't avoid, no matter how much they tried. That morning felt like any other. The hallways were filled with students rushing to class, some chatting in groups while others lingered at their lockers. Emily passed them quietly, balancing the stack of papers in her arms and a cup of coffee in her hand. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee gave her a small sense of comfort in the otherwise chaotic environment. "Morning, Ms. Dawson," a voice called out. Emily turned to see a fellow teacher, Mr. Bradley, waving at her from the teacher's lounge. She offered a polite smile and nodded in return. "Morning," she replied softly before continuing down the hallway. She didn't know it yet, but today would be anything but ordinary. The series of events that would unfold would not only reveal her secret but also change the way everyone around her saw her. In the classrooms and offices, whispers about Emily had started to circulate among the staff. "She's so quiet," one teacher remarked. "I wonder where she came from." Another replied, "I heard she's just filling in temporarily. Doesn't seem like the type to stick around." The students weren't any kinder. "She's so boring," one girl said to her friends as Emily walked by. "All she does is teach. No jokes, no stories. Just work." Emily had heard the comments before. She wasn't new to being underestimated. She had spent years blending into the background, letting others form their opinions without offering much in return. It wasn't that she lacked confidence. Emily had learned long ago that the most powerful truths didn't need to be announced, they revealed themselves when the time was right. What no one knew was that Emily's life outside of these school walls was anything but ordinary. Behind her composed exterior was a mind that had changed the world, though she had never sought recognition for it. She had traveled to conferences, shaken hands with world leaders, and held in her hands a symbol of achievement that most people could only dream of: a Nobel Prize. But none of that mattered here. At this school, Emily was just a substitute teacher, someone filling in until the regular teacher returned. And she was content to keep it that way. As she walked into her classroom and set the stack of papers on her desk, Emily glanced at the clock. The first bell was about to ring, signaling the start of another day. She adjusted her glasses and took a deep breath. The students filed in, noisy and distracted, as usual. They barely acknowledged her as they took their seats. Emily greeted them with her usual calm voice, trying to capture their attention amidst the chatter. "Good morning, everyone. Let's get started." Her words were met with a few groans and some half-hearted attempts to quiet down. Emily didn't mind. She had learned to work with the ebb and flow of classroom energy. But as she began the lesson, she couldn't shake the feeling that today would be different. There was a tension in the air, something she couldn't quite place. What Emily didn't know was that outside her classroom, events were already unfolding that would set the stage for the day's drama. In the main office, Officer Ryan, the school's security officer, was having a heated discussion with the principal. Ryan was known for his short temper and his tendency to overstep his authority. Today, his frustrations had reached a boiling point. Ryan had noticed a car parked in a reserved spot near the school entrance. He had assumed it belonged to a parent or visitor and was irritated that someone had ignored the parking rules. But when he learned it was the substitute teacher's car, his irritation turned to anger. "Who does she think she is?" Ryan muttered as he stormed out of the office. "These teachers think they can do whatever they want." Ryan made his way to Emily's classroom, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. He was determined to confront her, to remind her of the rules and put her in her place. Little did he know, he was about to walk into a moment that would not only challenge his assumptions but also reveal a truth he could never have imagined. Inside the classroom, Emily continued her lesson, unaware of what was about to happen. The students were beginning to settle down, their attention slowly shifting to the lesson on the board. Emily was in her element, explaining concepts with patience and clarity. But the peaceful atmosphere was shattered when the classroom door swung open with a loud bang. The students turned in unison, their eyes widening as they saw Officer Ryan standing in the doorway, his expression stern. Emily looked up, surprised by the sudden interruption. "Is there a problem, Officer Ryan?" she asked, her voice steady but curious. "There is," Ryan replied, his tone sharp. "We need to talk." "Outside." "Now." Emily hesitated for a moment, glancing at the students who were now watching the scene unfold with rapt attention. She set down the marker she had been using and walked toward the door. "Of course," she said, her voice calm. As she stepped into the hallway, the tension in the classroom lingered. The students began whispering among themselves, speculating about what had just happened. "What's going on?" one student asked. "I don't know," another replied. "But it looks serious." In the hallway, Ryan wasted no time. "You can't park in the reserved lot," he said, his voice loud and accusatory. "That's for staff members only." Emily's brow furrowed slightly. "I apologize if I caused any inconvenience," she said. "I wasn't aware of the rule." "Well, you should have been," Ryan snapped. "And don't think you can just ignore it because you're a teacher." Emily remained composed, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with Ryan's anger. "I'll move my car during the next break," she said, her tone measured. But Ryan wasn't satisfied. His frustration boiled over, and his voice grew louder. "You think you're special? That you can do whatever you want? Let me tell you something, you're not above the rules." Emily's gaze met his, steady and unwavering. She didn't respond immediately, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. For a moment, the hallway was silent, save for the distant hum of classroom activity. It was in that moment that Emily realized today would be the day her secret would come to light. She hadn't planned for it, but life had a way of unfolding in unexpected ways. And as the confrontation escalated, she knew there was no turning back. Today, she'd face a moment that no one could have predicted, not even her. As the silence stretched in the hallway, Officer Ryan's frustration grew more visible. His face flushed red as he clenched his fists, his stance aggressive and imposing. Emily, however, stood calm and unflinching. Her steady gaze seemed to unsettle him, but instead of stepping back, he pressed forward. "I'm tired of people like you thinking you can walk all over the rules," Ryan barked. His voice echoed down the hallway, drawing curious glances from nearby classrooms. A few students peeked out of their doors, their expressions a mix of confusion and curiosity. Emily tilted her head slightly, her calm demeanor never wavering. "I'm not walking over any rules," "Officer," she said, her voice firm but even. "I parked where I was told there was space. If I misunderstood, I'll fix it. There's no need for this level of hostility." But Ryan wasn't listening. To him, her composed response sounded like defiance. His voice grew louder, his gestures more animated. "Don't play innocent with me," he snapped. "I've seen enough people like you thinking they're too good to follow the same rules as everyone else." The word stung, not because Emily felt insulted, but because she recognized the kind of man Ryan was. He wasn't angry about a parking spot. He was angry about something deeper, something that had nothing to do with her. "Officer Ryan," she began, her voice calm but resolute, "it seems like this conversation is about more than where I parked my car. Perhaps we should talk about this later, away from the students and staff." But Ryan wasn't backing down. His voice boomed through the hallway, drawing even more attention. "No, we'll talk about this now. People need to know there are consequences when they think they're better than the rest of us." Inside her classroom, the students were glued to the scene unfolding just outside the door. Phones appeared in hands, cameras ready to record the drama. Whispered commentary filled the room. "She's in trouble," one student said. "Yeah, but she's so calm," another replied. "It's like she's not even scared of him." "Maybe she's not," a third chimed in. "But why would she be? She's just a teacher." The last comment lingered in the air, a reflection of how everyone in the school saw Emily, just a teacher, someone ordinary and unremarkable. They had no idea how wrong they were. In the hallway, Ryan's anger was reaching its peak. He stepped closer to Emily, towering over her, his voice sharp and accusatory. "I don't care who you think you are. Rules are rules, and you're not special." Emily's patience, though vast, was not infinite. She took a small step back, her expression still calm but her tone shifting slightly. There was a firmness now, an edge that hinted at the strength she rarely showed. "Officer Ryan," she said, her voice cutting through his tirade like a knife through water. "I understand you're upset, but your behavior right now is unacceptable. I've already told you I'll address the issue, and there's nothing more to discuss. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a classroom full of students waiting for me." Ryan's jaw tightened, his frustration boiling over. To him, her words were a challenge, a refusal to bow to his authority. He was used to people cowering in the face of his anger, but Emily didn't flinch. And that, more than anything, enraged him. The tension in the hallway was palpable. The air seemed heavier, the whispers of onlookers fading into a stunned silence. Everyone watching could sense that something big was about to happen, though no one could have predicted just how significant it would be. Ryan took another step closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous low. "You don't get to tell me what's acceptable, Ms. Dawson. Maybe you need to learn a little respect." And then, it happened. In a moment of impulsive rage, Ryan raised his hand, not as a gesture of reason but as a motion of aggression. His intent wasn't clear, perhaps he was trying to intimidate her, or perhaps he had simply lost control. But as his hand moved, Emily's reflexes kicked in. With a speed that seemed almost impossible, she raised her own hand not to strike back but to block his motion. In doing so, her sleeve shifted slightly, revealing something unexpected. A glint of gold caught the light, momentarily blinding those who saw it. It wasn't a bracelet or a watch, but a medallion, small but unmistakable. The onlookers gasped. Whispers turned to shocked murmurs as students and staff alike tried to process what they were seeing. "What is that?" one student asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It looks important," another replied, her eyes wide. But Emily didn't flinch. She stood still, her hand holding Ryan's wrist firmly in place, her eyes locked onto his with a look that was equal parts calm and commanding. "Officer Ryan," she said, her voice low but steady. I think it's time we ended this conversation. Ryan, for the first time, seemed at a loss for words. His gaze flickered to the medallion, and then back to Emily's face. Slowly, she lowered his wrist and took a step back, letting the silence speak for itself. The moment felt surreal, as though time had slowed to a crawl. Everyone watching knew that something monumental had just happened, but no one could quite put it into words. Emily adjusted her sleeve, the medallion disappearing from view as quickly as it had appeared. She looked at Ryan one last time, her expression unreadable. I suggest we both take a moment to calm down, she said quietly. This situation doesn't need to escalate any further. And with that, she turned and walked back into her classroom, leaving Ryan standing in the hallway, his face a mixture of anger, confusion, and something else, something that looked almost like fear. Inside the classroom, the students stared at Emily as she resumed her place at the front of the room. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension from the hallway seemed to have followed her into the room, hanging heavy in the air. Finally, one student raised his hand, his voice hesitant. Ms. Dawson, what just happened? Emily looked at him, her expression softening. She thought about how to answer, about how much to say. But instead of addressing the question directly, she offered a small smile and said, let's focus on the lesson, shall we? But even as she spoke, she knew that the events of the day were far from over. What had happened in the hallway was only the beginning. The secret she had worked so hard to keep was beginning to unravel, and there was no stopping it now. Today, she'd face a moment that no one could have predicted, not even her. It started with whispers, as it always does in places like schools where curiosity spreads faster than wildfire. The whispers began as subtle comments between students, muttered under their breaths during passing periods or between classes. Did you see her car? That old thing in the reserved lot? What's she doing parking there? I heard she's just a substitute. Isn't that spot for real teachers? She doesn't belong here. She's so old-fashioned. Emily Dawson, known to the students simply as Ms. Dawson, became a quiet topic of ridicule. In a school filled with youthful energy, trendy outfits, and flashy devices, Emily's understated demeanor and vintage appearance made her stand out, and not in a way that earned admiration. The students gave her nicknames like Ms. Out of Place and the Time Traveler, mocking her modest dress and calm, measured way of speaking. They saw her as an outsider, someone who didn't fit into their modern, bustling world. While some dismissed her outright, others joked about her in crueler tones, pointing at her car in the reserved lot as proof that she thought she was special. She's probably never even heard of a Tesla, one boy joked, earning a chorus of laughter from his friends. Yet, Emily carried on as she always did, undisturbed by the comments. She moved through the halls with her head held high, focused on her work and her students. Her calm exterior masked a lifetime of experience, a depth of knowledge, and a secret that none of them could begin to imagine. But not everyone let the whispers stay whispers. The school's security officer, Officer Ryan, wasn't one to let perceived slights slide. Known for his strict adherence to rules and his tendency to enforce them with unnecessary aggression, Ryan had been irritated from the moment he spotted Emily's car in the reserved lot. That spot isn't for her, he muttered under his breath, his irritation bubbling just below the surface. He wasn't just annoyed at the car. To Ryan, Emily represented something more, someone who didn't fit the mold, who didn't immediately command his respect, and who needed to be put in her place. It didn't take long for his irritation to boil over. Storming into the staff lounge, Ryan's heavy boots echoed against the tiled floor, catching the attention of the few teachers who were enjoying their morning coffee. Emily sat at the corner table, quietly grading papers, her usual calm demeanor unshaken by the noise. Ryan didn't bother with pleasantries. You can't park there, he barked, pointing a finger at Emily as though she were a student caught breaking the rules. His tone dripped with disdain, loud and sharp enough to make heads turn. Emily looked up from her papers, blinking once before responding. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her voice measured. "I didn't realize it was an issue. I'll move my car during the next break." But her apology wasn't enough for Ryan. He had expected her to stammer, to stumble over her words, maybe even to grovel. Instead, her composed response only fueled his frustration. "That spot is reserved for staff," he snapped, his voice growing louder. "Not substitutes. Not visitors. Staff." Emily nodded, her calm gaze meeting his fiery one. "I understand. It was an honest mistake. I'll move it as soon as I can." Her unshaken tone only made things worse. Ryan wasn't used to people, especially someone like Emily, responding with such quiet confidence. He wanted to see fear, regret, or at least some form of submission. Instead, her demeanor suggested she was in complete control, even as he towered over her. The tension in the lounge was palpable. The other teachers watched silently, their coffee cups frozen mid-air, their expressions a mix of discomfort and curiosity. No one dared to intervene. Ryan, however, wasn't finished. "You don't seem to understand how things work here," he said, his tone heavy with condescension. "Rules are rules, and if you can't follow them, you don't belong here." Emily's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. She straightened in her seat, her calm expression unchanging but her presence suddenly commanding. "I understand the rules perfectly, Officer Ryan," she said, her voice steady. "And as I said, I'll move my car. There's no need for this to escalate further." But escalate it did. Ryan wasn't about to let the matter rest, not when he felt his authority was being questioned. His voice grew louder, his words harsher, until the confrontation spilled out into the hallway. By now, the sound of the argument had drawn the attention of students and staff alike. Doors creaked open as curious heads peeked out, their eyes widening at the sight of the towering security officer facing off with the quiet substitute teacher. "Why is he yelling at her?" one student whispered. "Isn't that the lady who parked in the wrong spot?" another replied. The hallway buzzed with murmurs as more people gathered to watch. To them, this was just another piece of school drama, something to film, to talk about, to laugh over later. Ryan, oblivious to the growing crowd, continued his tirade. "You think you're special because you're a teacher? You think the rules don't apply to you?" Emily, standing her ground, responded calmly. "No, I don't think that. And I've already said I'll move my car. I'm not sure what else you expect from me, Officer Ryan." Her unwavering tone only made him angrier. "What I expect," he spat, "is for you to learn some respect. People like you need to understand that you're not above the rules." For the first time, Emily's composure faltered just for a moment. The phrase "people like you" struck a nerve, but she quickly regained her calm. "Officer Ryan," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "I don't think this is about a parking spot anymore." Her words hung in the air, a quiet challenge that made Ryan's face flush red with anger. The crowd of onlookers grew silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, in a moment that no one could have predicted, Ryan's frustration reached its peak. His voice dropped to a low growl as he stepped closer, his body language aggressive. "Maybe you need to be reminded of your place," he said. Before anyone could react, Ryan raised his hand not in a strike but in a gesture of authority, intending to intimidate. But what happened next shocked everyone. Emily's reflexes were faster than anyone could have anticipated. In a smooth, practiced motion, she raised her own hand, blocking his advance with a calm but firm gesture. The motion caused the sleeve of her blouse to shift, revealing a glimpse of gold, a small medallion pinned to her shirt. The hallway fell into a stunned silence. Students and staff stared, their eyes fixed on the medallion glinting in the fluorescent light. It wasn't just any medallion. Its intricate design and unmistakable significance sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. "What is that?" one student whispered, breaking the silence. "That's no way," another stammered, their voice trembling with disbelief. Even Ryan, whose anger had been blinding moments ago, froze in place. His eyes darted to the medallion and then back to Emily's face, his expression shifting from rage to confusion, and then to something else, something that looked suspiciously like fear. Emily adjusted her sleeve, the medallion disappearing from view as quickly as it had appeared. She stepped back, her composure intact, and spoke in a voice that carried quiet authority. "This isn't the time or place for this conversation," she said, her tone calm but resolute. "If you'd like to discuss this further, we can do so privately. For now, I suggest we both return to our duties." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving a stunned Ryan and a hallway full of silent onlookers in her wake. Inside her classroom, Emily closed the door and took a deep breath. She knew what was coming. The whispers would spread faster now, the questions louder, the scrutiny unavoidable. The secret she had worked so hard to keep was starting to unravel, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. For better or worse, everything was about to change. The whispers didn't stop after the hallway confrontation. They grew louder, spreading like wildfire throughout the school. Students and staff alike were consumed with speculation. "Did you see the way she blocked him? That was weird. And what was that thing on her shirt? It looked like some kind of medal or badge. Maybe she's ex-military or something. No way. She's too quiet for that." Ryan, however, wasn't satisfied with leaving the matter unresolved. Back in his office, he paced the floor, replaying the scene in his mind. The glint of gold, the way Emily had calmly countered his aggression, it all gnawed at him. He didn't like mysteries, especially ones that made him look weak. "She's hiding something," he muttered to himself, his fists clenching. "And I'm going to find out what." Meanwhile, Emily returned to her classroom, trying to focus on her lesson. But even as she spoke about historical events and important figures, she could feel the weight of her students' stares. A hand shot up from the middle row. "Ms. Dawson," a boy named Trevor began, his voice hesitant but curious, "what's that metal thing you were wearing earlier?" The room went silent. All eyes were on her now, waiting for her response. Emily paused, her expression unreadable. For a brief moment, she considered deflecting, brushing off the question with a vague answer. But she knew that wouldn't stop the rumors. "It's just a reminder," she said finally, her voice calm. "Something that helps me stay focused on what's important." Her answer didn't satisfy anyone, but no one dared to push further. The bell rang moments later, releasing the students into the chaos of the hallway. As they spilled out of the classroom, their whispers filled the air again. "She didn't even explain it." "Yeah, but did you see how she looked at Officer Ryan? She wasn't scared at all. What if she's, like, a spy or something?" The theories became wilder as the day went on. By lunchtime, Emily was the talk of the school. Even the teachers were buzzing about her. "I heard she's some kind of government agent," one teacher whispered in the lounge. "Maybe she's a war hero," another suggested. "That would explain the medal." "I think she's just a substitute who got lucky at a thrift store," a third said, dismissively. But not everyone was content to speculate. Ryan, determined to uncover the truth, began digging into Emily's background. He called the district office, asked around among the staff, and even checked her personnel file. What he found only deepened the mystery. "She's got no social media presence," he muttered, scrolling through blank search results. "No public records beyond basic employment history. It's like she doesn't exist outside of this job." Frustrated, Ryan leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Who was this woman? And what was she hiding? While Ryan pursued his investigation, the students were conducting their own. A group of them, led by Trevor, decided to take matters into their own hands. "We need to figure out what's going on," Trevor said during lunch. "There's no way she's just a regular teacher." "How are we supposed to find out?" a girl named Mia asked. "She's not going to tell us anything." Trevor grinned, holding up his phone. "We don't need her to tell us. We just need to watch and listen." Over the next few days, Trevor and his friends began observing Emily closely. They noticed the way she moved with quiet confidence, her sharp attention to detail, and the way she seemed to always know what was happening around her. "She's way too alert," Trevor whispered during one class. "Like, she notices everything." "And did you see how she handled that argument with Ryan?" Mia added. "She didn't even flinch." "Who does that?" Their curiosity grew when they spotted Emily walking to her car after school.